We are back. This is Ryan Moon on Parlay News Podcast, and our show today is about how one bettor turned a mere 19 cents into a staggering $23 million payday on a Powell wager. So let me ask you something, and I want you to really think about this. What are the odds? Jerome Powell drops the T word, says Trump out loud during his press conference next week. If you guessed 1 in 5, congratulations. You're as wrong as the $138,000 currently sitting in that market at 19 cents. But hold that thought, because we're going to tear that trade apart in a minute. Right now, $23 million is sloshing around Federal Reserve decision markets on Kalshi, all of it resolving in 4 days. $7 million of that is parked in a single contract priced at 98 cents. And I got to tell you, that's not a market. That's a parking lot for capital that's too scared to do anything interesting. It's like watching money take a nap. But here's where it gets beautiful, absolutely beautiful. Buried in the derivative plays around that boring consensus. There's actual edge to be found. We're talking word mention markets where traders are granularly positioning on Powell's exact vocabulary during his 2 p.m. press conference. This is where prediction markets get gloriously, beautifully absurd. And I love it. Let's start with the main event. Kalshi's hottest market this week is the Fed rate decision, specifically the hold rate's unchanged contract sitting at 98 cents. You're laying 50-1 odds for 4 days of carry. The math is painfully simple. You risk $98 to make $2 by Tuesday evening. That's what happens when consensus becomes so overwhelming that the market stops being a market and becomes a glorified treasury bill with worse liquidity. You might as well stuff that cash under your mattress. But here's what makes this interesting, and pay attention because this is where the game really gets played. The ecosystem of markets trading around it. Traders aren't just betting on the decision itself. They're positioning on whether Powell says unchanged versus maintain our current stance. They're betting on whether he mentions tariffs, inflation, projections, government shutdowns. The good afternoon contract, and I swear I'm not making this up, sits at 97 cents with 136,000 in volume, because Powell literally always opens with those words. That's not a prediction market. That's a cultural ritual with a payout structure. We've turned monetary policy greetings into a tradable asset. What a time to be alive. The real action is in the policy signal terms. Tariff inflation trades at 67 cents with 40,000 in volume. That's pricing 2 in 3 odds. Powell uses that exact compound phrase. And I'm skeptical. Powell spent years perfecting the art of discussing explosive topics without using explosive language. The man is a linguistic ninja. He'll say inflation pressures in one sentence and trade policy in another, but linking them explicitly is political. Watch this drift toward 55 cents as Tuesday approaches because Powell doesn't do explicit. He does plausible deniability dressed up in a suit. Now the dissent market, this is where smart money actually lives. No change with more than 0 dissent sits at 95 cents with 44,000 in volume. This is the sophisticated play, the kind of second-order thinking that separates the professionals from the amateurs. You're getting paid to be right about both the decision and the vote split. The last few meetings were unanimous, but with tariff tensions rising and some regional Fed presidents getting nervous about declaring victory too soon, a hawkish dissent is very plausible. At 95 cents, you're pricing 95% odds of at least 1 dissent if rates hold. That's your edge, thinking second order while everyone else stares at the boring headline number like it's going to do a magic trick.
Building a new product? Temez Labs takes you from napkin sketch to the App Store. Trusted by Fortune 500s for quality, security, and speed. Book your free strategy session at temez.ai.
Over on Polymarket, the hottest market is Trump deportations, specifically whether the administration deports fewer than 250,000 people. This contract is at 3.6 cents after collapsing from 4.45 cents over the past week. Translation for those of you just tuning in, the market went from pricing 4.5% odds to 3.6% as ICE expansion headlines accelerated. More resources equals more removals. Equals the threshold becomes easier to hit. Basic math. At 3.6 cents, you're getting 27-1 odds. Here's my contrarian take and lean in close. That's too low. Not because I think Trump won't try to hit big numbers. He absolutely will for political credit. but because the definitional chaos around what counts as a deportation creates way more uncertainty than 3.6 cents prices in. Migration Policy Institute specifically noted that official metrics are opaque and definitions vary wildly between removals, returns, and voluntary departures. If this market resolves based on official DHS removals only, hitting 250k requires 5,000 per week every single week. That's a pace never sustained in the modern era. The measurement uncertainty alone is worth 5 or 6 cents. Add court interventions, operational bottlenecks, potential political shifts. You've got defined downside of 3.6 cents and significant upside if implementation slows. This is a calculated long for anyone who believes in bureaucratic friction, and let me tell you, nobody creates friction quite like the federal government. Now let's talk about what moved this week. On Kalshi, the Powell says unchanged market jumped from 92 to 95 cents with 30,000 in volume. 3-point move on a market resolving in 4 days. Why? As the hold rate's consensus solidified, traders realized Powell needs to explicitly communicate no change or unchanged in his opening statement. With no dot plot update at this meeting, his verbal framing matters more. At 95 cents, you're still getting 5 cents on a phrase that's near certain. The only risk is Powell uses synonyms like maintain our current stance without saying the exact word. That's your 5% tail risk. Volume surges tell you where the action really is. That will Powell say Trump market at 19 cents? That's traders gaming. Whether journalists directly ask about Trump's tariff threats and whether Powell takes the bait. The IMF just warned about tariffs and geopolitical tensions threatening markets. That's the exact framing that could force a Trump mention. But here's the thing, and this is crucial. Powell has institutional incentives and personal discipline to avoid saying that name even when discussing administration policies. He'll say the administration or fiscal policy or trade policy, anything but the name. The December transcript shows 0 mentions of Trump despite discussing tariff risks extensively. 0. At 19 cents, you're pricing 1 in 5 odds. He breaks character. Fade this aggressively to 10 or 12 cents. Is the easiest short on the board. This is practically free money sitting there waiting for someone smart enough to take it. Your catalyst calendar is simple. Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern, FOMC announces rates. 99% hold expected. At 2:30, Powell's press conference begins. All decision markets resolve Tuesday evening. All word mention markets resolve Wednesday at 11 a.m. after official transcript review. $23 million in volume resolves in a 90-minute window. That's your main event. Mark your calendars, set your alarms, do whatever you need to do. Before that, NYC snowstorm resolution Monday night. The 10-inch threshold at 74 cents looks safest given forecast convergence. The 12-inch at 48 cents is a coin flip, your value play if you trust higher-end models. The 15-inch at 25 cents is a lottery ticket for coastal banding scenarios. For mispriced markets, we've covered the big ones. Powell saying Trump at 19 cents is mispriced high should be 8 to 10 cents. Trump deportations under 250k at 3.6 cents is mispriced low, should be 6 to 8 cents given measurement chaos.
Oh, hey friend, do you like what you're hearing? Now you can have a ridiculously amazing podcast too. Check out holler.studio to get yourself one today.
New markets worth watching. These Powell word mention markets represent an evolution in Fed trading. Beyond core policy decisions, you can now position on specific linguistic choices. If this format works, expect expansion to other high-stakes speeches. Kalshi's testing entertainment markets with Netflix daily rankings. Thin liquidity at 28,000 now. But if they build this vertical, it opens up entire categories around streaming trends, movie openings, cultural momentum. Bottom line for traders. The Fed decision at 98 cents pays you nothing for 4 days of risk. The derivative plays, descents at 95 cents, word mentions with actual uncertainty offer better edge. NYC Snow 12-inch threshold at 48 cents is this week's best value bet. Trump deportations at 3.6 cents is a calculated long for believers in implementation friction. And that Powell says Trump market at 19 cents. Remember when I opened with that question? Here's your answer. The odds aren't 1 in 5. They're closer to 1 in 10, maybe 1 in 12. Powell's been playing this game too long to slip now. That 19-cent price is pure emotional positioning from traders who think a direct question forces a direct answer. It doesn't. Not with Powell, not ever. Take the other side, collect your dimes, and thank the optimists for the donation. That's your week. Trade smart, fade the obvious, and remember, sometimes the most boring consensus hides the most interesting derivative plays. Now go make some money. Thanks for listening to Parlay News. You can support our podcast by following the show, rating it 5 stars, and telling your friends. Remember, the content on this podcast are for entertainment and educational purposes only, and do not constitute financial advice. Prediction markets are extremely risky, and you should never risk more than you are prepared to lose. Always do your own research.
Grep News. Tamez.